one story at the beginning of You Are the Placebo is really what sealed the deal for me and started to make changes in my life. And I would love for you to share your experience with the bike accident.
Sure. I mean, I think in order for us to wake up, we need a wake-up call. And I was a young guy and living in San Diego and in La Jolla, had a practice there, and was in a triathlon in Palm Springs, California. And I was making a turn and passing two bikers. And there was a police officer around the corner that was waving me on. And he had his back to the oncoming traffic. So when I made the turn, this four-wheel drive Bronco basically catapulted me out of my bike, and I wound up breaking 6 spinal vertebrae. And the compressive forces from the impact caused the vertebrae to compress, and I had bone fragments compressing back on the cord, and the neural arch of the 6th thoracic vertebrae had broken like a pretzel. It was compressing the cord. So I had multiple compression fractures of the thoracic spine and the upper lumbar spine, and I had bone fragments on the cord with cord compression, and the typical surgery is Harrington rod surgery, as you know. And I got 4 opinions at the time from 4 leading surgeons in Southern California, and they all advised that I'd get the surgery. And at that time, I decided to go against it. I decided to not get the surgery. And at that time, wasn't really common that you told doctors or you disagreed with doctors, especially when I was facing a condition like this. And for the most part, I think if it was anybody else, Matt, that I happened to see their MRIs or CAT scans or films, and I saw this, Harrington rod would have been something I would have considered, but this was me. So 4 days of indecision, and then I decided to not have the surgery. And of course I thought, kept thinking that same thought, the power that made the body heals the body. And I wasn't going anywhere or doing anything. I was basically laying face down. So I thought, well, if this power is an intelligence and it's innate in us, then let me see if I can make contact with it and see if I can give it some instructions and see if I could be present enough with it that I could focus on what I want to have happen instead of what I don't want to have happen, which is their prognosis was probably I'd be paralyzed the rest of my life. So I was weighing what I knew against what I didn't know, and I had 6, almost 7 weeks of absolute torture because I couldn't get my mind to do what I wanted it to do. I kept starting off creating and reconstructing every vertebrae, and the next thing you know, I'd start thinking about living in a wheelchair the rest of my life, or should I sell my practice? And I kept going to things I didn't want to have happen. And I think the hormones of stress, when we're stressed and we're out of balance, we always, prepare ourselves for the worst case scenario. So it was difficult for me to get my mind to do what I wanted it to do, because I figured if this was a consciousness that lives within us, and consciousness is awareness and it's paying attention, then it must be paying attention to me. So I had to be present with it. And I think paying attention is being present. And I think we know when people are present with us in our lives because they're paying attention to us. So I kept taking my attention off it over and over again, and I realized that I kept giving it an improper signal. I wasn't giving it a clear template of what I wanted. So I'd start all over again, and it would take hours to get through it, and I wound up at the end being frustrated and angry and everything else. And then I just started practicing it more and more and more, and one time it just I went through the whole process without losing my attention, and it just was like hitting a tennis ball in the sweet spot. Something just clicked for me. And then from that point on, I started getting better, really better. And what took me 2.5, 3 hours to do, I was doing in 45 minutes. And I started noticing my body starting to respond. And I think the moment I started noticing changes in my body, what was happening outside of me with what I was doing inside of me, now I got really excited. Now it was no longer torture. I wasn't tormented by the process. I was excited to do it. And anyway, so 10.5 weeks, I was back on my feet, back in my practice at 12 weeks. And I just made a deal with myself that if I was ever able to walk again, I'd spend the rest of my life studying the mind-body connection and mind over matter. And I've been doing that since that time. And people like you that are, applying the same principles and experiencing the truth behind it, I think transforms us. And you're the example of truth. And I want that for everybody.